Welcome to The Outlet, where we keep you plugged in to everything energy. To lead the charge, here's your host, Tom Glanzer.
Welcome back to Northwestern Energy's The Outlet. It's a big day for us here. We've been on the air for a year, and on the air, I still act like I'm on TV every once in a while. We've been on the internet for a year, and I think my mom and maybe a few people internally watch it, but this one is going to get us quite a few views. I am honored not to only have a friend, but also the governor of my state, the 34th governor of South Dakota, Larry Rhoden. Welcome to Northwestern Energy's The Outlet.
Pleasure to join you this morning.
It's not too often in America where you can have access to political figures like this. And we don't take this lightly, but we also know it's South Dakota. And when I say my friend, Governor Larry Rhoden, I mean that. Very approachable man, a man of honor. And I've enjoyed watching the last couple years or the last year really. And just to see how you've moved into this slot. And we'll get to that later. But this is a low-key show right now, and then we'll get into the details later. But Larry is a West River rancher, and you still have the weld shop?
Yeah. Sold the cows a few years ago, but still do the custom welding. My youngest son has kind of taken over that for me, so I have to elbow him out of the way on the weekends so I can get to my welding table.
When ranchers
therapy.
When ranchers sell their cows, what do they do with their free time? They become the governor of the state? Is that how it works?
Well, that's why I sold the cows. It was when my job as lieutenant governor got to be full time, and I wasn't being a very good cattleman, and so one of them had to go. So I opted to get rid of the cows.
In a time when a lot of politicians wear a cowboy hat to try and send a message, you have earned the right to wear a cowboy hat. You are West River. When I'm around you, I'm always like, how would Louis L'Amour describe this man? I'm assuming you were a Louis L'Amour fan growing up, right?
I was, actually.
How would Louis L'Amour describe Governor? I'm always amazed by just your size and stature. So that's one of the things that Louis would probably talk about. But how would Louis L'Amour describe Larry Rhoden on the farm?
Oh man, that's an impossible question. I don't know how to answer that.
He is extremely ruggedly handsome, sun-tanned by years in the field of West River sun, hardened hands from the work of the land, maybe something like that.
This interview is going to be a piece of cake, and so far you're making me really uncomfortable.
I'm gonna throw some at you later that aren't just about you and your personal stature, but I've always been amazed. One of my favorite stories, it was actually about last year around this time. I think you were still lieutenant governor. We were supposed to be in Mitchell on a pheasant hunt, but they got a bus full of people from Mitchell and brought them to Huron because we all know the pheasants are better in Huron than they are in Mitchell. And I have to poke at the guys in Mitchell every time they have a Mitchell pheasant hunt, but they bring them to Huron. And Governor Rhoden, you were still lieutenant governor, and you got to come out in the field, and you and I were right next to each other. I have 3 Vizsla pointing hunting dogs they're goobers. Sometimes they work great, sometimes they don't. And I'm like, guys, the guy that's going to be governor of our state is hunting right next to us. Can you guys please behave so I'm not embarrassed? It's almost like you're talking to your kids. I'm like, please behave so we're not embarrassed. And I kid you not, were we 100 yards in the field?
Yeah, not
even 100 yards in the field. My middle dog goes down on point right in front of the governor. And I said, Larry, ever shot a bird that's been pointed? And I don't think you had up until that point. And I said, walk in there at a 45 and that bird will get up. And in my head, it's like, this is going to be a hen. This is going to be ridiculous. He's just going to sit there and we'll yell hen. But with the video camera out and the governor walks in like a true Louis L'Amour character with the shotgun held high, walks in, my dog holds point. I have another dog honoring it in the back, and that bird gets up, and like a true South Dakota painting, the governor drops that bird. One of my other dogs grabs it and brings it back to me. It was I tell that story a lot, and I'm proud of you. That first bird over a pointed dog, or a dog pointing a pointed bird, that's always special for me to get somebody that experience. And I like to think I gave you a South Dakota experience there.
Yeah, well, you did, because you put a lot of pressure on me, because it took, by the time they had it all staged, I think there was 50 guys that had their cameras out and the pressure was on. So
Yeah, if you would have missed, the video probably would have ended up more viral than
Governor's Day if I'd missed.
I think that was already kind of set in stone. But no, you did a great job. And talk about that. So let's just talk about the transfer in. So you were in the House of Representatives. You worked with my father. My father always held you in high regard, and I think that was probably, I knew of your existence. My dad spoke highly of you, and he talked about this guy that went to Sunshine Bible. I'm a James Valley Christian guy, and we didn't talk highly about Sunshine Bible guys because that was the arch enemy, and we beat you guys all the time. Did you guys ever beat James Valley in any sport when you were in high school?
I'm older than you are, but when I was in high school, we never played James Valley.
Okay,
maybe in track occasionally.
Yeah.
But no, they weren't in any of our conferences, so never. But there was always the little rival.
Yeah, later on, it turned into a big rivalry to the one point when we beat them in basketball on their own homecoming. A pickup load of Sunshine Bible boys, and I've got people to back me up on this, drove by, and of course we didn't have coach buses, just old yellow school bus. We were driving back to Huron, and a pickup load of boys drove by, and I was sitting in by one of the windows, and they egged our bus on the highway coming out of Sunshine, going north into Miller. Bunch of eggs got thrown at the bus.
Never done anything like that.
Our bus driver ran them down, caught 3 of the boys, put them on the bus, and drove back to Sunshine. What's that?
Run over him?
No, he ran them down. They turned off onto a gravel road. He drove right after them. This is a bus full of, this is the 90s, 80s, 90s, late 80s, early 90s, whatever it was. And he caught those boys. He jumped out of the bus, caught those boys, and put them on the bus and hauled them back. And I don't know what the punishment was, but we all laughed so hard at that. And to this day, I know some of the guys from Sunshine, they're good friends, and we talk about that every once in a while. You guys egged our bus after we beat you in basketball. I mean, it's a great story. But Sunshine Bible in 77. So yeah, a little bit, we didn't quite cross each other's paths in high school, but then into the House of Representatives, and then talk about kind of your role and your
Yeah, well, I got in the legislature. We were never very politically motivated, but we were. Our family was always service motivated, and so I did a lot of boards and committees and volunteer and coaching growing up. And somebody asked me one time if I'd consider running for the school board, which I did. Served on the school board 5 years. Then got into the legislature. Or ran for the legislature, found out I'd have to resign from the school board in order to be a legislator. So that was pretty appealing to me to get off the school board. Tough job. But in the legislature, I was a product of term limits. So we had a real void in leadership because all the old leaders and all the institutional knowledge was leaving the legislature. So it was really a transition time for the legislature, and so I ran for the leadership positions, and within 4 years I was majority leader. And it was really kind of a turning point in my life because I learned a lot about the process and about good leadership from some of the old members. Of course, that's when I met Christy Noem, and we developed a working relationship almost immediately. She was very valuable to me. We were carrying the legislation on ag land property tax, and really heavy lifting, and she got it, and when a lot of legislators didn't. And so we worked together on that, got to be close allies. The next term I moved to the Senate. She stayed in the House, and we worked across the chambers together. And of course, then she went to Congress, and 8 years later, decided to run for governor. And I remember the day she called me up and said, I want you to consider being my running mate, which took me about 2 seconds to give her an answer to that question. But that was at that time the honor of my life to to have the opportunity to serve in that capacity with somebody that I'd gained so much respect for. And so took the role as lieutenant governor. We won that election, and it was kind of a trial by fire. We had some tough years there immediately, and then with COVID was a game changer, I think, in a lot of ways for our state, for our nation. I've always said that COVID was the biggest litmus test we've ever faced as a state or a nation or a planet on what you're made of, what kind of metal you have in you, about your conservative values. Do you believe in limited government? Do you understand where our rights, liberties, and freedoms come from, that they're given to us by God, not by government? And looking back, the answer in South Dakota was we had the only governor in the United States that stood alone. I stood with her, saying that since we're not the author of people's freedoms and rights, we have no authority to take them away. And we stood on that principle, and it's paid dividends in years since. And it was pretty tough sledding through it on the front end.
And obviously Northwestern Energy covers Montana as well. And I think one of the things that rang true for me through that, and I think it was actually Kristi Noem that said it, what's right for New York and what they feel is right for some of those other big places isn't right for Fruitdale, South Dakota. Name your South Dakota town. These places, most of those places don't understand how we operate out here and the freedoms that we do enjoy. And that was, not only did that push South Dakota in the national spotlight a little bit, but it also pushed Governor Noem, yourself, into that spotlight. Governor Noem obviously gets called into Trump's office, Secretary of Homeland Security, and you become number 34. How taxing, you've been here for a year, how taxing is this job on a person?
Yeah, well, it's certainly not a cakewalk. It's had its challenges, but I'll tell you, after we got through the first week and got into session, it was a pretty challenging session, too. We had a huge class, probably the biggest class of freshmen in the history of the state, especially legislators have never had any kind of political experience, or a lot of them didn't even know what the legislative process looked like. We had our challenges, but we got through it, and it was all I had the benefit of a very good team. I mean, Kristi and I had put the team that we had together over 6 years. And so I sit in on most of the interviews for cabinet secretaries. So I had that benefit. But I also, I think we faced some tough issues, and we picked them off one by one. And we had our setbacks when the prison didn't get across the finish line in session, for instance. That was hugely disappointing, but just regrouped, established a task force, and moved forward. But I say all that because the further and further I got into it, that was a big part of the process I went through, the thought process on whether to stand for re-election or not. And I kind of, the prison special session on prison was kind of the final hurdle that I wanted to get past before we made that decision. And it was very encouraging to me to see my team working and the process we went through. And it was a very good process. And my lieutenant governor did a tremendous job running that task force. To get through all that, we had people on the sidelines that were throwing hand grenades at us, and even internally, the political gamesmanship. And even with that, we were able to get that across the finish line, and really felt like that was kind of a turning point for me in the decision to stand for re-election, because felt like the good Lord had given me the opportunity to work as a legislator for all those years and work with Kristi Noem, and I learned a great deal. legislative process, about good process, and about leadership. And the more people I talked to, the more I really felt that I owed it to the state to uh, stand for reelection.
And that that announcement you just a couple a month or so ago, I don't remember the timeline, but I'm assuming, and let's put this out there right away. Sandy, your wife, is a sweetheart.
Yeah.
Love her to death. She's a South Dakota girl through and through. That has to be a family decision, because when you make that decision, you're saying, I'm giving up family. I'm giving up kids, grandkids, weekends in Union Center at the ranch. You really are committed. We're politically gifted in South Dakota. I've said that before, that we have so many good leaders from a small cross section of people. I don't understand how these places that have big cross sections of people give us such poor leaders. But in South Dakota, we've been blessed, politically gifted. We have that mentality that our brightest and best are going to give back to the state, not some private entity. And thank you for being who you are right now, and then also having the willingness to continue on.
Yeah, I'd comment about that, because I think it's been an interesting study for me as I've, lived on the ranch and then went through the, this evolution in politics. I've really contemplated great deal about what makes South Dakota kind of a special place, because I really do think it's special. And the answer is because of the people. And I think that's the answer to what you were saying, why we get along so well, because we have a group of really good-hearted people with a lot of good common sense, and they see through a lot of the fluff. And I think they see the hearts of the people that they're voting for. And we have a small state, so they have the opportunity to get to know their leaders. And I show up at a lot of receptions, and I said in my inaugural address, I was not going to be hard to find. And I've tried very hard to honor that commitment. And so I think that's part of the secret sauce that makes South Dakota a special place.
And we're a small state, but honestly, we are a divided state. That river really does change the landscape and kind of change the political culture as well. And we kind of, as you think about our top elected leadership, we kind of have two East River guys, two West River guys. Do you guys claim Thune West River still? I mean, is he still technically a West River boy, or did he grandfather into Sioux Falls?
Yeah, quite honestly, I don't pay that much attention to that anymore. And I think that's softened.
That's the right political answer.
Well, I think it's softened through the years, and I'll use me as an example. When I said there was a void in leadership when I got in, and so I was majority leader in 4 years. And from Union Center, South Dakota, majority leader. I remember a friend of mine as a legislator, when we got our name badge, he said, Larry Rhoden, majority leader, Union Center, South Dakota. And he pointed at my name badge. He says, "You won't see that very often." But at the same time, the Senate elected Eric Bogue, who was from Faith, South Dakota, just up the road from Union Center, the most sparse area of the state. And we had both majority leaders in the House and Senate from Western South Dakota. And it wasn't a big deal.
Yeah, and that is South Dakota. That really, you don't have to be from some fancy place. It's because we're all from about the same place anyways. There's always a link back to the farm or back to a small town. Let's get into the nuts and bolts of it. I've thrown you softballs for 19 minutes. It's time to talk some stuff here. And obviously you're on Northwestern Energy's podcast, so we're going to talk energy. The energy future is paramount. And you think about the next 10 years of what's happening, coal-fired generation, a lot of those plants are starting to get to their end of life. Big Stone, we think about in the northeast corner of the state, has served us so well for 50 years. Montana has Coal Strip. That plant has been open for quite a few years. Those plants are starting to see that they're probably at the end of life, and we have to come up with the next portion of what's going to generate power. The energy future of South Dakota, small modular reactors. We talk about nuclear stuff, data centers, baseload generation, transmission across the state, things like that. How much does that come into your wheelhouse, and where is the state on kind of that development? What do you see as the future? Let's talk about like just nuclear production. Is that something that has crossed your table yet as the governor?
Oh, absolutely has. Uh, in uh, we actually, it was like, I think it was almost 2 years ago now that Christy and I met with a nuclear energy company and spent better part of a day being educated on small modular nuclear reactors, and just learned a great deal about where that's at in the process, and did a lot of research that day. And so yes to all of the above. We're an all of the above approach on to energy development in South Dakota. And in a lot of ways, we've kind of led the way as a state. I think rank it's the best state in the nation for energy to produce from renewable sources such as wind, solar,
Solar.
hydro,
Yep.
coal, natural gas. And so, yeah, we've been very engaged in the energy discussion. I'll also mention I had convened a roundtable discussion with some of the energy leaders across the state here a few months ago, and we had just a roundtable discussion about including funding for the nuclear energy study and other things, legislation on paving the way for data centers. And I think that's important. It's kind of a big part of who I am as a leader. You know, I've kind of developed. Um, I think one of my strong suits is understanding the power to convene. As leaders, I think that's the most underutilized tool in the toolbox of people like myself, or even when I was majority leader, is just the power to bring people together and have the discussion. And so, on this discussion and many others, uh, that's what I kind of focus on, is bringing the right people to the table. Uh, and we could talk a little bit about the data centers, if that's all right.
Yeah, that's where I was going next.
Yeah, because there's a lot of talk about, some people have tried to vilify the data centers, and I think it's all part and parcel of the discussion about economic development. And that's one cog in the wheel of economic development potential for the state of South Dakota, but it's a significant one. And so at that same roundtable discussion, we talked about them developing legislation to provide some incentives to bring data centers to South Dakota. Well, data centers, they're here to stay. Every time we pick up our computer, that information is going through a data center. What has changed is artificial intelligence, and the significant increase in the amount of data that they need to produce, and the opportunity with that through data centers to provide for economic development for your state. And so, like I said, the energy companies are working on legislation. We hope to see something. I'm sure we'll see something during session. And another thing that I think that makes South Dakota kind of special is our legislative process. A lot of states do things a lot differently. I've come to understand in South Dakota that we do, after having experience with other legislators and many conversations, we do a lot of things right. And we have a really good process in the legislature. And so we can bring legislation forward, uh, like from the energy companies, put that through the process, a very arduous process, and then bring everybody to the table, open invite to the state for people, proponents and opponents, to come and pick that bill apart and go through it with a fine-tooth comb. And at the same time, my team is doing the same thing. We're combing through it, finding out what the consequences will be with the legislation, the impact's going to have, uh, and And then at the end of the day, hopefully we have a product that ends up on my desk and I can sign it into law.
As we look at where we're at right now, as far as data centers in the energy business, in the RFP world, we're getting calls on the weekly basis. It maybe slows down a little bit here and there, but we're getting calls for incredible load. They want 500 megawatts. They want 750 megawatts, which is we're 333. Northwestern Energy on the third hottest day of the year in South Dakota, 330 megawatts would probably cover our entire load. So these things are coming in and almost doubling in load. Obviously, they are going to cause a hockey, so, because the energy demand has pretty much been kind of slowly rising, but this is the hockey stick. I mean, it's going to go up. I was in Nebraska about a month ago for a nuclear summit put on by the University of Nebraska at Lincoln, and governor spoke down there, and he just actually mentioned that Nebraska's been having some success with bringing in some data centers in the Omaha area. They've had a few others. Obviously, North Dakota has had some success up in Ellendale with the Applied Digital one. Right now, it seems like we're being surrounded by data centers, but they haven't quite come into South Dakota. What legislation needs to happen to close those deals and get those companies that are going to invest in South Dakota, make incredible jobs in South Dakota, pay massive taxes in South Dakota, and really bring us into that? What's got to happen this year in the legislature to really close those deals on an economic development type front?
Well, I think
What are they doing different that we're not?
Well, they have they provide incentives that we don't, and that's kind of a hot button issue in South Dakota right now, and there's a lot of misperception about what that represents, and in what's at stake is we're not as attractive as other states because we don't provide some of those incentives. And so we need to look at what that involves and what we're actually what that actually means, because we're talking about the conversation we've heard is about a sales tax rebate on equipment for data centers, and that's the key component. But for that incentive, if you're in a position if you don't offer the incentive, they're not going to come to South Dakota because every surrounding state around you does. Then you put yourself at a disadvantage. And when you consider that alongside the billions, millions, and hundreds of millions of dollars in property tax relief and the jobs created by having those data centers in South Dakota, then it really makes sense to look at something like that in the legislative session.
How involved you were with the decision to move forward in the GOED with the energy czar. I don't know what the job position is being called, but you're bringing an energy czar on. That does state, that we understand this is a big deal, and the next 10 years is really going to be paramount for what happens. How aware is state government, on the most part, besides the PUC? They're dialed into what we're doing. How aware are you of kind of how the utility providers in the state work? How much, how we can help, how we are involved with the economic development? I mean, did you really understand kind of the big picture of maybe even the Southwest Power Pool and things of that nature prior to coming in, or is that kind of a learn as you go type thing? Because it's such a weird industry.
Well, I will say everything's been a huge learning curve for me, and I've been drinking from fire hose and a lot of this stuff. But the Office of Economic Development has focused on helping our energy industry grow and innovate. And South Dakota's prioritized, like I've said, an all of the above energy approach. But that energy czar position will help us execute our energy strategy in South Dakota. I think in the past, it was held by Hunter Roberts, who is Secretary of Ag and Natural Resources, and Bill Even, who's now my Commissioner of Economic Development. Both of these guys are outstanding individuals and a great asset to my team. So once hired, the director will work closely with the companies, the citizens, government leaders, to promote uh, responsible, efficient, and forward-looking energy development in our state. And I think that'd be a great asset for us.
Let's go Hunter Roberts Bill, even two of just South Dakota, just great guys. I love working with those guys, so committed to what they do in economic development and in ag. We couldn't be more blessed to have those two guys. I just wanted to give them a shout out as well. But why is economic development and government being involved in economic development such a hot button issue in 2025 when you look back on kind of how South Dakota was economically built, and maybe the 70s and 80s were a little bit different. Maybe Janko just the big joke was is that you were going to give Bill Janko a piece of your mind and you went in and you gave him a good listening to. But how did that change in the last few years that economic development kind of became one of those things that, well, government should stay out of it?
Yeah, I don't know a really good answer to that. I think it's part of perception, and it's part of maybe a political faction that's really distorted some of the information. When they talk about corporate welfare, I'm like, really? Providing an incentive, uh, help a company. First of all, we want to bring the right companies. Our first priority is to prioritize South Dakota companies. And I'll say this because, I had the Open for Opportunities tour right after session, and it was amazing what I learned and just kind of the aha moments, because we talked to literally dozens and dozens of business owners, some that were generational, been in here forever. A lot of those who had expanded in South Dakota had the benefit of listening to what their perspective was and why they stayed in South Dakota, why they expanded. Other businesses that just moved here, and their excitement and enthusiasm about having the opportunity to be in a state like South Dakota compared to where they came from. And it really accentuated to me just how fortunate we were in South Dakota and the climate that we've developed. My fear is some of this anti-development talk will throw a wet blanket on that. And so I'm working at getting the facts out as far as what that represents. This is not corporate welfare. We're not giving them taxpayer dollars to bring them into our state. We're providing them incentives and giving them a little bit of the dollars that they've invested back to them in the form of sales tax rebate, in exchange for the hundreds of millions of dollars in property tax relief that'll represent in that area, or the skilled jobs. That's what's building our economy in South Dakota. That's what's making us one of the states with the strongest economies in the nation.
Considering where we're based too, the fact that we have, multi-million dollar projects, $100 million projects and things of that nature looking to be based in South Dakota. It's an opportunity that doesn't come around very often. I can't think of another time of growth when it has. If you're elected, and we're coming up on that election year, but if you do get another 4 years, you're going to be the leader through probably some unprecedented energy growth, some unprecedented economic development type growth. What is your vision for when Larry Rhoden is done? When you just become that former governor that gets to come and speak at events, in 10 years or whatever, and kind of do the Dugard tour and loosen up a little bit. What do you want to look back on in the next 4 years? What do you want to look back on as something that you succeeded at? What's kind of your platform for the next 4 years and 10 years, and how you're setting up South Dakota? What are your legacy, really, is what you'd look at it as?
Well, big picture, it's pretty simple. I want to leave South Dakota. When I'm done, I want to leave it a better place than it was when I took the reins as governor. I think Christy Nome did that, and she helped the Nome Rhoden administration helped set us up for success. Talking about energy specifically, if I look back on South Dakota and think we are a diversified state, we took an all of the above approach. We've got a balanced very viable, safe, secure energy system that's providing energy for a cheaper rate and a sustainable system. I'll look back at that as a success.
I'm pushing my time with you, but I got one more question for you before we wrap up. And I'm going to start asking a lot more people just some of these off the cuff, end of the story questions. Thank you for your time. We don't take this lightly that you took your time out of your day to join us on the outlet here at Northwestern Energy. Always have appreciated the time that we get to spend with you. I appreciate your service for all these years. It's very, very humbling to be in your presence, and it's always a pleasure to be in your presence as well. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right. Governor Rhoden is stranded on a desert island with a record player and 3 albums. Give us the 3 albums, because I think this gives me an insight to who the person is, because I'm a guy that I deal in music. So let's go.
So 3 albums.
3 albums on a desert island.
Yeah. Well, I don't listen to that much music, so it was kind of a tough question, but I'd have to say it start with the Statler Brothers. I love the Statler Brothers. And I turn the radio way up and I sing the bass parts. It makes me sound better. Maybe the Statler Brothers, maybe ABBA.
Ooh, I did not see that one coming.
Yeah, well, I don't, there's not that many female vocalists that I really like, but I just always loved them. And the third one will really surprise you, and it'll show that I'm an old codger. But when my twin sister and I were kids, we had this old player and record player, and Mom gave us a Burl Ives record. And there's something about his voice, just the songs that he sang. I often think back songs that we play them over and over and over again.
Yep, Burl Ives he's got that voice. My mom had tapes when I was a kid with little Bible stories on them, and Burl Ives read them to you. I had no idea who Burl Ives was at the time, but this is Burl Ives. He would narrate those things to you. So that was my introduction to Burl Ives before I knew he could sing too. But those are 3. The ABBA, that one threw me. I got to admit, Governor, you got me over that one. So that is our time. You in Pierre right now, or are you in Sioux Falls? Where are you at?
No, we're in Pierre.
You're in Pierre. In Pierre, South Dakota, right there in the middle of America, making things happen for the rest of the state. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your service, and best of luck. I do not envy anyone going on a campaign trail. I watched my father do that just on a very small level. I can only imagine how taxing it is on you. So good health to you.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it.
All right. That is our governor of South Dakota, Larry Rhoden. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. And again, you can check us out online on Spotify and on YouTube, and go to northwesternenergy.com for anything else you got. Thanks for joining us on The Outlet.
That's a wrap on this week's episode of The Outlet. For more information and weekly energy updates, like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, or visit northwesternenergy.com.